In January 2026, researchers published the most comprehensive review ever conducted on exercise and depression. 73 studies, nearly 5,000 participants. The verdict is now in. Exercise works. For treating depression, it rivals psychological therapy. It may match medication. This isn't speculation anymore. It's evidence at a scale we've never had before. But here's what makes this research both hopeful and heartbreaking. The very condition exercise treats is the same condition that makes exercise feel impossible. We're going to look at what this landmark review actually found. What types of exercise work best, how much you need, and the psychological trap that explains why knowing this often isn't enough. Because telling someone with depression to exercise is like telling someone with a broken leg to walk it off. The advice isn't wrong, but it misses something essential about the condition itself. That gap between knowing and doing, that's where the real psychology lives, and understanding it might be more valuable than the research findings themselves. Depression affects approximately 280 million people worldwide. It's one of the leading causes of disability on the planet. The human toll is staggering. For decades, our primary weapons have been medication and talk therapy. Both work. Both have limitations. Medications carry side effects. Therapy is expensive and hard to access. So researchers have long been curious about alternatives. Exercise emerged as a candidate early on. Small studies suggested it helped. But small studies can mislead. The problem with depression research is that it's messy. Placebo effects are powerful. Study designs vary wildly. It's hard to blind participants to whether they're exercising or not. That's why systematic reviews matter. They pool data from multiple studies. They look for patterns that single studies might miss. They weigh evidence by quality, not just quantity. The Cochrane collaboration is the gold standard for these reviews. Their methodology is rigorous. When Cochrane speaks, the medical community listens. Which brings us to January 2026. A team led by researchers at the University of Lancashire published an updated Cochrane review. They analyzed everything we know. The review examined 73 randomized controlled trials. That's the gold standard. Participants randomly assigned to exercise or comparison conditions. Nearly 5,000 adults with diagnosed depression. The conclusion was clear. Exercise reduced depression symptoms as effectively as psychological therapy. The evidence for this comparison was rated as moderate certainty. When researchers compared exercise to antidepressant medication, exercise showed similar benefits. Though the certainty of that evidence was lower, the trend was consistent. This isn't about exercise being a miracle cure. It's about exercise belonging in the same conversation as our established treatments. That's a significant shift in the evidence base. The review authors themselves noted the implications. Quote, exercise stands out as a low-cost and widely accessible option that also improves physical health. Let's talk specifics. How much exercise actually helps? The meta-analysis found a sweet spot. 13 to 36 sessions provided the greatest benefit for reducing symptoms. In practical terms, that translates to about 45 minutes of moderate exercise 3 times per week. Achievable for many people, at least in theory. Not all exercise was equal. A 2024 BMJ analysis found that walking, jogging, yoga, and strength training were more effective than other forms of exercise for depression. And here's an interesting finding. Combining aerobic exercise with resistance training appeared more effective than aerobic exercise alone. Something about the combination matters. Why might exercise work? The neurochemistry offers clues. Exercise affects the same brain pathways that antidepressants target: serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. When you exercise, your brain releases these neurotransmitters. Serotonin regulates mood. Dopamine drives reward and motivation. Endorphins reduce pain and create feelings of well-being. It's essentially a pharmacy inside your own body. The molecules are the same ones we synthesize in laboratories and package into pills. Exercise just produces them naturally. But there's also a psychological mechanism. Exercise provides what researchers call behavioral activation. It interrupts the withdrawal and isolation that depression encourages. Depression tells you to stay in bed, to cancel plans, to avoid. Exercise is the opposite. It requires you to move, to be in the world, to do something despite not feeling like it. There's also social support. Research published in Frontiers in Psychology found that social connection during exercise mediates its antidepressant effects. We're social creatures, even when depressed. So the evidence is solid. Exercise works through multiple mechanisms. It's accessible and low cost. It improves physical health alongside mental health. Why isn't everyone doing it? This is where the research collides with the reality of depression, and it's where we need to be careful about how we interpret these findings. Depression isn't just sadness. Its core features include anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure, and profound fatigue. These aren't just symptoms. They're barriers to the very treatment that helps. Critics of the exercise as treatment narrative point this out. Telling depressed people to just exercise is like telling someone drowning to just swim. The advice assumes capacity that the condition removes. Motivation system that would normally get you to the gym. Depression hijacks it. The reward system that would make exercise feel good. Depression dampens it. This creates what clinicians call a behavioral trap. The thing that would help is the thing you can't do, and knowing it would help often makes things worse. It becomes one more thing you're failing at. I want to sit with this tension for a moment. Because the research is real, the benefits are real, and so is the impossibility that many people feel. These two truths coexist. Exercise helps depression, and depression makes exercise incredibly hard. Both statements are supported by evidence. Both deserve respect. The research acknowledges limitations. Many studies had small sample sizes. There's potential for bias. You can't blind someone to whether they're exercising. Most studies measured short-term effects only. We don't know yet whether the benefits persist long-term. We don't know if exercise prevents depression relapse the way maintenance medication might. These are important unknowns. Some researchers argue exercise should complement, not replace, established treatments, especially for severe depression. The condition exists on a spectrum, and solutions should match severity. So what do we do with this information? How do we bridge the gap between evidence and action? Let me offer some thoughts, not as prescriptions, but as possibilities. First, the research shows benefits across intensity levels. Light walking counts. The barrier doesn't have to be a 45-minute gym session. Any movement beats no movement. If perfectionism about exercise type is stopping you, let it go. The data says walking works. Yoga works. Strength training works. Pick the one that creates the least resistance. Second, combining aerobic and resistance training appears more effective. But again, if that feels like too much, aerobic alone helps. Resistance alone helps. Something beats nothing. Third, focus on reducing what psychologists call the activation barrier. The smaller the first step, the more likely you'll take it. Lay out workout clothes the night before. Don't think about the full workout. Think about putting on the shoes. The commitment isn't 45 minutes. It's 2 minutes of getting ready. Then decide. Fourth, the social support research matters. If you can, find a way to exercise with others. A walking group. A yoga class. Even just texting a friend about your workout. Connection mediates the effect. When movement feels impossible alone, external accountability and companionship can provide the momentum your brain can't generate on its own. Fifth, consider exercise as part of a portfolio, not a replacement for professional support. If you're struggling with depression, this research doesn't say skip the therapist or stop the medication. It says add movement to what's already working, or use it as an accessible entry point while you arrange other support. Treatment isn't either/or. It can be both and. And finally, perhaps most importantly, be gentle with yourself about the gap between knowing and doing. That gap is part of the condition, not evidence of personal failure. Depression lies about a lot of things. One of its cruelest lies is that your inability to help yourself means you don't deserve help. That's the disease talking, not the truth. The research gives us hope. Nearly 5,000 people across 73 studies showed improvement. That's real. That's not nothing. The effect exists, even if accessing it is hard. This Cochrane review matters because it settles a long-running debate with unprecedented evidence. Exercise isn't just good for you in some vague wellness sense. It's a treatment that works. The authors put it simply. Exercise is low cost, widely accessible, and improves physical health while treating mental health. That's a rare combination in medicine. But knowing something works and making it work for you are different challenges. The research answers the first question. The second question is personal, individual, and deserves compassion. If you're listening and exercise feels impossible right now, that's not weakness. That's a symptom. The goal isn't to shame yourself into the gym. It's to find any path forward that works for you. Maybe that's a 5-minute walk around the block. Maybe it's movement while watching something you enjoy. Maybe it's asking someone to walk with you. Start where you are, not where you think you should be. The research will continue. We'll learn more about which people benefit most, which exercise types work best for different symptoms, and how to maintain benefits long-term. But for now, we have something we didn't have before. Certainty. 73 studies pointing in the same direction. The debate is over. The question now is implementation. I'll leave you with this thought. The fact that exercise helps depression, and that depression makes exercise hard, isn't a cruel cosmic joke. It's information about how recovery actually works. Recovery rarely happens because we suddenly feel capable. It happens because we find tiny ways to act despite not feeling capable. And those tiny acts accumulate. The research tells us the destination is worth reaching. How you find your path there, with help, with support, in tiny increments. That's your story to write. Thanks for listening to The Psychology of People. If this episode helped you see something differently, share it with someone who might need to hear it too.